Assalamu alaikum, tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Brent Strathpehi, and I hope whoever you are, wherever you are healthy and happy. And I'm making this video to share with you a really important development in my life and an evolution of sorts that's significant really to me this year, which is of course the finding of Islam and the accepting of Islam into my life. It's a really great feeling, to say the least. And I thought I would share a little bit about my background and what drew me to Islam and the events that unfolded and continue, of course, to unfold. I have officially been a Muslim only for a couple of weeks, not even, so it's very new. However, a series of events happened that may influence me to make that decision. And a little bit of backstory, I'm from New Zealand, and New Zealand is predominantly you would say traditionally a Christian country. That said, we're a modern Western country, and as you may well be aware, religion in general in the Western world is sort of been on a downward trend for some years, for many years. That said though, we're a secular society here, so people have freedom of religion. We have migrant communities from all over the world, which includes of course people from not only different cultures but different religious backgrounds, be it Muslims, Hindu, Buddhist and Judaism, all manner of religion and cultural backgrounds. So although we are, like I say, traditionally a Christian country, an English colony, most people in New Zealand are exposed to a variety of cultures and religions, myself included. I have not been a religious person per se much of my life, although I do have a background in Catholicism. My grandmother, bless her soul, she was quite a devout Catholic, and that put the Catholic influence into our family life. I went to Catholic schools, a couple of Catholic schools growing up at different times. I wouldn't say I went to majority Catholic schooling, but a couple of times. There were periods of time where we went to church, but they were intermittent, and basically for all of my adult life I've not been a religious person. That said, I've always believed in God. I've always believed that there is something greater than us, but I have not given it much formal expression in my life. As a younger man, like in my early 20s, I probably went through a pretty typical phase of I would never say it was actually atheism or anti, but like I say, I always believed in God, but I was quick to see the problems of religion for a time. But by and large, I've been kept a respectful distance from religion for most of my life. Now, in the last few years, I've started traveling back and forth to Southeast Asia. My father these days lives in Thailand. Thailand is primarily a Buddhist country, so I sort of was exposed to that, and I've always been curious about cultures, countries and languages, so wherever I've been, I've taken some interest at least in religion. So I started going to Southeast Asia, visited Vietnam and Cambodia, and then late last year I had a chance to go to Indonesia for the very first time. And as you may or may not know, Indonesia is a predominantly Muslim country. I think it's over 80% of the people, and it's a big country of 260 plus million people. More than 80% are Muslim, but there are significant communities of Christians, Protestants, Hindus, and places like Bali is predominantly Hindu, so it's a diverse place. It's not officially an Islamic country, but with 80% plus, it's obviously an important obvious part. So I went to Indonesia with a group of New Zealand teachers. Cut a long story much shorter, I sort of fell in love with the culture, not Islam in particular, just the general culture of Indonesia. I really loved it. I loved the people, the language, the vibe. I sort of felt, as a Maori person from New Zealand, indigenous person from New Zealand, I felt an affinity with Indonesian people. I make a sort of a semi-joke, semi-serious comment that Indonesians are like Southeast Asian Polynesians, in the sense of they're really family oriented, a lot of humour, they love to eat and laugh, and very social people. At the same time, Indonesia is part of Asia, so you have the colour and the food and the culture that you might associate with Asia mixed very very obviously with sort of more of a Polynesian vibe, laid back and islands and that sort of thing. So I really, really loved that. That was my first time in a Islamic country. Like I say, not officially an Islamic country, but that's a big part of life there. And I was only there for 2 weeks, but I really enjoyed it, and I began learning Bahasa Indonesia and making Indonesian friends, both in Indonesia and here in New Zealand, like from the immigrant community. And I really, developed my knowledge and interest in all things Indonesia. And then I went back to Indonesia again this year, this time for a couple of months, and I travelled Indonesia, and I got a real chance to live with, stay with families, go to schools, and associate with the people on more of a local level than the 2-week short trip I did last year. And slowly but surely, it's crept up on me as much as anyone else. I started to really get a feel for the Indonesian Islamic, at least, way of life, the outlook, the kindness, the attitude, and the prayer and salat 5 times a day and I started to sort of slowly but surely realize that this is a really beautiful way of life. Indonesia is not a wealthy country by any means. Of course, there are some very wealthy people there, but the majority of people are, surviving, working, and some are, outright poor. I mean, there's social issues there. It's a developing country, but Islam really sort of reached to me, and I feel like Allah reached to me while I was there and started to pull me in, and I enjoyed it. At some point I became conscious of that, I started realizing that, hey, I think I'm starting to feel something here, and at that point I could have, if I chose to, make it a very mental thing, and by that I mean I could have thought about a lot and just decided to turn that over in my mind a lot. But I actually held off from that because I realized I was enjoying the feeling as opposed to the idea. Obviously a feeling is more emotional and an idea is academic or mental. So I just let it be. I didn't decide quickly, oh yeah, I love the Islam now, it's time for me to be a Muslim. I didn't think like that at all. I just kind of just let it brew, let it marinate. I mentioned it to a couple of people very quietly, but mostly I just kept it to myself because, like I say, it wasn't something I wanted to leap to conclusions. And I travelled around. I started in Bali, and then I went to Sulawesi for a while, and then I was in Java for like nearly a month, in Jakarta and Jogja and Solo, Klaten, and then I went to Sumatra, and I was travelling all around and staying with Muslim people and observing the Muslim life, and I fell in love with it. Really, I did, and I very quietly made the decision at the tail end of my trip that I would become a Muslim. But even then I didn't want to be swept away with a sort of a euphoric, romantic idea. I held back and I said to myself, but I want to learn, I want to read, I want to talk to people, I want to develop this idea. And I deliberately wanted to wait till I came home because I didn't want to, in a wave of excitement, commit to something so serious, because if I knew that if I was going to go there or come here, that I would take it seriously and I would respect it. And also, by coming home, I thought, well, I'll test it. If my interest wanes and because the novelty wore off and I'm not in Indonesia anymore, I'm not surrounded by Muslims and azan and all of the things that remind you and masjids and all that, I thought, well, if I'm still interested after a while, then I'll go further, and if not, well, it was a nice idea. Again, needless to say, my interest grew. I kept reading. I even watching testimonies of others and other converts or reverts to Islam, and mashallah, I made the decision that I will become a Muslim. Now, I didn't plan. When I took my Shahada a couple of weeks ago, it wasn't an organised planned thing. I didn't set a time and a date and a place. All I did was I went and saw my good friend Sasya in Auckland. She's Indonesian, but she's lived in New Zealand most of her life. And I asked her prior to my visit, I said, I'd love to meet your dad, who I hadn't met at all at that point. And I guess I was looking forward to talking with and meeting with an older Muslim man. just to, not for any specific reason actually, it was just to, I don't know, get my ideas and my feelings off my chest to someone that could maybe offer me some wisdom or some guidance. And I went there with the idea that I would meet him and we'd have a chat, and I would have been more than happy with that. And we did that, and I went and met him, and we sat down, and he did most of the talking because I was all ears. You know, he's an older Muslim man who's been a Muslim his whole life, and so he talked about it. I told him my feelings and my thoughts while in Indonesia and till now, and then he simply said, "Brent, you don't have to be an expert in Islam to be a Muslim. Muslims, we're all learning. We're all, regardless, maybe we've been a Muslim our whole life, but we're always learning. So there's no point where you know enough to then you can become a Muslim." He said, "No, if you feel it in your heart and Allah has spoken to you and you feel it, then you can become a Muslim at that point with minimal knowledge." And then of course, and then he said, "And if you would like to take your Shahada with me, I'll be happy to do that." So I did, and it felt right. It felt good. I felt really I was ready. I did actually feel a really nice sense of serenity. I should backtrack a wee bit to say that even in the lead up to that, I was practicing at, and I say this not as a practicing Muslim, but I was practicing at being a Muslim. I'd begun to pray. I'd begun to read even Quran, and just try this as a lifestyle with some action. Because it's one of the things I really love about Islam, is that it's a religion of action also. The foundation is belief in God, and that's absolutely critical. You know, that everything's built off of that. You believe in one God, and then of course the practices and the way of life comes with time and knowledge and practice. So I became a Muslim on Wednesday the 19th of December 2018, and Alhamdulillah, I'm so happy about it. Since then, of course, I've been just continuing my learning. I'm very much a novice in the area of knowledge and information and practice. It's all new, but I really enjoy the process of being a Muslim and learning about it and developing it and deepening it. One thing in Indonesia, this is one of the things I will say to anyone who's interested in Islam or maybe has an opportunity to visit an Islamic country or something like that. One thing that actually drew me to Islam, that helped a lot at least, was that no one ever sat me down and tried to preach to me or suggest that I ought to be a Muslim too, or judge my way of life or anything like that. In fact, Indonesians are very open and honest and quick to ask you about religion. Most Indonesians are religious, whether they're Muslims or Christians or Buddhists or Hindus or whatever. Most people, for most people in Indonesia, religion is a part of their life. So I had one experience among many, but one that sticks out I'll share with you. I was in Takalar. Takalar is a small town about an hour from Makassar, and a friend, I was staying with a friend, and we met these people that he knew. So it was just a friend of a friend. Anyway, this old man, he says to me, the normal thing, "What's your name? Where are you from?" And of course, the very next question popped straight out of his mouth was, "What's your religion?" And in Indonesia, that's a really normal thing to ask. In the Western world, it's a wee bit like kind of a personal question, but not over there. So he asked me straight out, "What's your religion?" And at that point, I basically just told him the truth. I said, "I don't have religion, but I believe in God." And his first reaction was, "Alhamdulillah," and he gives me a big hug, and he says to me, "Oh, we believe together, we're brothers." And I thought in hindsight, like, what an amazing response. He didn't judge that I wasn't a Muslim. He didn't judge my background or my lack of tangible faith, I suppose. But I believed in God, and so did he. He saw what we had in common, and that was enough for him. So he gives me this big, warm, genuine bear hug, and he goes, "Alhamdulillah," which means, for those who don't know, means praise be to God. And he says, "We believe together, we're brothers." And then, because it was only a fleeting meeting, he got back in his car and said hooray to everybody, his friends, and me included, and then drove off, and I've never seen him since. I didn't actually even catch his name or know what the relationship was. But it was just one of those random little enjoyable moments that sticks out to me. And of course, not everybody is that tolerant and that open-minded. Perhaps I'm not trying to overstate his position, but it was a nice one at least, and it certainly helped to get me more and more curious and interested in Islam. So here I am, on the year that's been. Of course, adopting new religions and new ways of life comes with its challenges. It's not easy. It's something that you have to work on, and I make mistakes in life and in my being a Muslim as well, of course. But I'm working on it, and inshallah, I'll continue to become a good Muslim. So therefore, I want to wish everybody all the best for next year, for the new year. And inshallah everybody will be healthy and happy and successful in their pursuits. Thank you very much if you watched it, and feel free to comment or ask questions or whatever. So and to all my Indonesian friends, thank you so much. Terima kasih banyak. Alhamdulillah.